I think so. Hey, welcome everybody. This is Captain Ron and the group. We are, that's actually Peter there, but I'm going to do that. Okay. This is a celebration tonight. Number one, we're live, which is a big surprise over the last 2 weeks. And okay. This is a celebration. There, make sure you mute yourself. Number one, we're live. Which is a big surprise. Okay, I silenced that idiot.
Just to keep us humble.
I know. I silenced that other idiot on the other screen there. So, welcome everybody. This is Ron Nielsen with the crew here tonight. We got one in the hangar there. Elaine was had some personal stuff to do tonight. I got me and my good buddy Captain Eric there. Yay, Eric, complete with baseball cap. And our first officer and chief technical officer. We've added another chief because out of the ashes came the phoenix rising, and we came up with a way now for some of you. You may be watching us on YouTube live now. So we're going out live simultaneously over Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. I think we're in Periscope. Okay, cool.
And I can confirm that indeed, actually, we are live on all three platforms. And just like we said yesterday, why is that even important? So maybe you wanna talk to the requests that we're getting from people, and just being able to.
Oh, go for it. You got the floor.
Okay, so one of the things we love is getting your feedback and getting your questions and suggestions, and hard to believe, but absolutely true, as evidenced by our Captain Eric himself. There are those few people who are not on Facebook, and so for those of you who are not, we wanted to find a means to bring that weekly live show to you as well. So that's how Captain Ron and I went on a search. How is that technically possible, and how can we do it in a way to really enhance that experience for those of you who are not on Facebook? So we found a way, I'm happy to say. And if you are watching us on YouTube, please post a comment. I have the ability to see the chat, and I see Jeremy, you are live. Yesterday we used Jeremy in case it wasn't gonna work. Jeremy was on live yesterday at our practice stream, and
yeah, he's like a super stealth. No matter where we are, he shows up. So he must have been an F-117 driver at some point in his career. So
all right. So
okay.
what's in our show tonight?
And again, people can comment live. We can see their questions coming in, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right. So let's moving right along. Let me pull this down. We'll switch.
Hi, Mary. By the way, I saw your posts. That was really cool. Which reminds me, if you're watching and you're not aware of our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather Facebook group, and you happen to have Facebook, go over there. We have a great community of people who are extremely supportive. Post your successes, post your challenges, any books or resources that might have helped you. And I see Albert switched over to Facebook today. He watched us yesterday from YouTube. So take it away, Captain Ron. What are we talking about tonight?
Yeah, well, like you already got the Facebook. We want people to join the Birds of a Feather group on Facebook, even if you're watching us on YouTube. And put your questions in there. Send them to us via Messenger. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Fearless Flight YouTube channel, and you'll get notices when we post videos over there. That's the next phase we're going into is to post a lot of more video up in there and answer questions and things like that. Let's see, tonight we want to start out with talking with this is actually carried over from last week with that catastrophe that we had. And Truly Wyman Hoff, I believe she pronounced her last name. She had a question about the 737 MAX again. So she said, Hey, Capt Ron, I was wondering if you could address the latest report on the accidents involving the MAX 8 Boeing planes. It seems from my understanding that the planes were at fault and not the pilots. Is that correct? Okay, Eric and I were talking about this, and we believe that this is a report now. It's a week old, but the preliminary investigation, and we want to emphasize preliminary because we don't really know any more than you do until we see some authoritative reports coming out of the investigation. But the preliminary report was that the pilots had followed the Boeing procedures for that issue. Is that what you remember, Eric?
Yes, in regards to the Ethiopian crash, yes, that they were following the correct procedure for the runway trim. Yes.
And that comes on top of the previous week. There was a report that in the case of the Lion Air crash last October, it came to light that there was a jump seater. That's a pilot riding on the jump seat between the two captains there, or just behind them. And he had actually on the day before the crash, that same airplane came in, had a similar problem, and I believe he testified that he had actually accomplished some of the steps to take control or take over from the runaway trim, and that's how they landed successfully. So that does put some credence in there as to the fact that Boeing had a procedure in effect. And we don't know anything about whether his experience was he had more experience in a Boeing 737, because Eric and I have both flown that airplane a long time, and the earlier models of that was a standard procedure if you got a runaway trim thing. But again, to kind of recap, there are some new issues with the MAX, which is why they're taking a deep dive into it now. And one of the big things out of that is going to be the certification process. Because this turned out to be the tipping point for a system called MCAS, which is added to the stability augmentation. So if that doesn't answer your question there, Truly, give us another one. So, and I want to remind Truly and everybody else, if you have questions or you see things in the media, if you would, it really helps us, particularly if you can send us the URL. Just take a snapshot of the URL, copy that, and paste it in the message. And then we can go right to the source of where you got your information, and we can better and more authoritatively leave a response for you. So, okay. So
hey,
with
Ron,
that,
can I hit that for 2 seconds? Truly's question, because we were talking about it this week.
Absolutely.
So Truly, you asked about the accident rate. In particular with the 7.3 MAX 8 and 9, and the answer is yes, asterisk. The rate is higher. However, there are so few of them flying, and they've been flying for such a short time. Their data points as a percent of the whole are very, very much smaller than a percent of the whole group, which would make a big uptick in the rate when there's an accident. And the recent reviews that Boeing is doing now, the recertification has been delayed a little bit. Boeing has what they call a non-advocate review group, internal engineers with their own group that did not work on the 737 or the system, reviewing the software system fix themselves. In other words, they didn't have a dog in the fight, and they're reviewing the fix and the proposal to the FAA. And they found something in the fix, in the solution, that concerned them enough that the submission to the FAA for the fix has been delayed because this internal review group found something they wanted to correct. So in other words, their homework project that they're turning into Boeing is getting turned in a little bit later because Boeing employees found internal things they wish to address. So it's coming, but they don't want to turn in the homework till they make sure they got it right, if that helps you at all. That's all I want.
Cool. All right, so
sense?
now, yeah, I'm going to do a share. I think I need the...
And we do have a couple of questions for later as well, just to let you know.
Well, are they relevant to right now?
No, go ahead. Well, they'll fill in later.
Okay, so I'm going to do a share, and we're going to show the big screen here. Keynote. Okay, stand by. I may get this wrong. We're going to see what happens when I put the slide up there. See which one shows. Oh, you got the wrong one. I bet you got a blank screen right here.
There it is. The cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a delay. Yep, I see the, yes, there it is.
Okay, cool. All right, I can't find my notes here, but this looks fairly complicated. This is what Eric and I started to be schooled in back in the
Sorry,
in the
it was
mid-80s.
just somehow it dropped the frame on the share, but it's okay. Just keep going.
Okay, cool. Okay, and I apologize for the fidelity is not too good, so you probably can't read those that well. But basically, and Eric and I will banter back and forth on this. So how do you manage the risks, okay, in something as complicated as flying? So we'll start down here on the lower left here with this is all designed to look like Swiss cheese. And there's a fellow named James Reason. He's a British psychologist, I believe, organizational psychologist. And so he came up with this model back in the early 90s, I believe it was. And so imagine that each one of these layers of Swiss cheese, and you can imagine that the holes are going to be random, right? They're not going to line up normally, although this one here is lining up. And when they all line up, that causes that leads to the risk for an accident, because accidents are multifaceted. They're not just one thing that happens. And so let me start at the bottom here. So imagine this first layer, this outside piece of cheese at the lower left-hand column there. Imagine that's security, okay? So the piece of cheese itself represents the domain of security, all right? And so each one of those holes represents a gap that could happen. And you all have seen comments in the news stories about the fact where they'll have test parties go through and they'll actually get a weapons through security. So that would be a hole in the system, okay? I hope that makes some sort of sense there. And then the next layer, we could call that pilot training, right? Eric, jump in there.
Sure.
You got another, okay? So pilot training. So one of the holes could be a gap related to, no, you know what? I'm going to use fatigue, okay? Fatigue, it'd be pilots in general, and a hole could be a fatigue pilot. So now, in order for some crisis to happen, you might have to have, a hole in security line up with a hole in the pilot realm, like fatigue or something. Anyway, you get the drift. So it's only when those holes randomly line up, and this is what risk management is about on the level of a complicated industry like aviation. And this is something that we started looking at and reorganizing, and everything from cockpit management, checklist procedures, fatigue in the industry, looking at the work rules. One of the things that came out of one of the crashes was they changed the pilot rest requirements, the pilot work duty requirements. What are some other manifestations out of this? Security, of course, is probably the biggest one after 9/11.
Well, the one I was thinking of, the biggie that happened after the 60s that caused so many airplane crashes and is now greatly diminished, is wind shear, because of our ability to detect it, both on the ground from the tower and from the airplane systems itself to detect it, and our understanding of what it is and how it works, and ability to avoid or escape, where that really wasn't well understood in the 60s and 70s, and brought down a lot more airplanes. So right. one layer in there could be training for this specific event that was known to have caused many airplane crashes, and that's greatly diminished with knowledge, detection, and training, all for that one single event.
And the whole system, what it does is it looks at like the Swiss cheese model here. It likens human systems to layers of Swiss cheese, as I mentioned before. And then they talk about something as failure domains. So what are the domains in which failures could occur? Those are basically fourfold. One is organizational influences. So they can be influences throughout the organization that are systemic. So and where this came from was in the past, when there was an accident, they would attempt to pin the causal factors on one or two areas. And in particular, the biggest one was pilot error. And what they found out was that was not complete. It did not paint an accurate enough picture about what was really going on. So, and we can kind of see that in the Boeing Max accident. In that, at first blush, there was the pressure was on to say that then maybe the pilots made a mistake, and then what came out was no, there looks like there's a problem in the design of the airplane, and now they're looking at holes in training, and then back to the pilots. Were they trained adequately, or things like that, and so what this does is it takes a comprehensive view, and I guess the bottom line that I would like to make here, Eric, is the point that it is comprehensive, and this is why aviation is so safe. We cannot deny the fact that the Max had a fatal crash, a tragic crash, but one of the things you can count on is they will fix it, and it will result in far fewer accidents down the road. Let's see, anything else that I should talk about that? I think the rest of it would be pretty technical and not really worth bringing up. The one of the things I'd like to move on to is we've had a really growing activity on our Facebook page, and I wanted to do just an acknowledgement of Walter Kassler. Walter's been with us now, holy mackerel, got to be at least 6 months, maybe pushing a year now. Time flies when you're having fun. And he wrote a post, put a post in Facebook a week ago. We wanted to cover this last week. And it was basically the kind of the title was "How Bad Was My Fear of Flying?" And he told a story about a year before he had gotten over his flying, and it said, I'm looking at the notes here, and he went. I think what triggered him one time, he went to a luggage store with a friend. Back in 1991, and she had a big trip coming to Europe, and had asked him if he'd like to accompany her and help pick out a line of luggage there. And he goes through this story. It's really well written. If you haven't seen it on Facebook, I highly encourage you to do that. We got a lot of comments on it, a lot of really nice comments and complimentary, because Walter did do a really nice, he's a great storyteller. And when he got to the one set of luggage that triggered him, it was the Amelia Earhart connection. And he felt like the universe was kind of like flipping him off, like of all the things have for luggage to kind of throw his fear of flying in his face was this Amelia Earhart collection. And then he goes on to talk about now he's on the other side. He's not only is he past that, where he would be so sensitive to that, but now he's actually looking all over online for that awesome Amelia Earhart collection of luggage. So if you should see that, post it, give Walter a post on Facebook, and hopefully he can find that. He's probably kidding by now, but anyway. So you said we had some questions, I think, Peter?
Yes.
I'm looking at mine. I don't see mine.
Okay, so if you want to just look through the chat while I want to acknowledge Cami. She posted recently in our Birds of a Feather Facebook group that she's flying, and it was just really cool how everybody in the group came together, and thanks for sharing that experience. And I'm not sure, have you acknowledged John Mattingly yet?
No, I was going to talk about that. We actually had two people to acknowledge in that realm, and talk about it, because you had more of the live story, or you were the first one to read that. So
Yeah, so John came to the 201 class at Air Hollywood and met with Captain Ron, Captain Eric, and myself, and he, one of the things that we are always very, very aware of here at FearlessFlight is we all have different journeys. And so, you know, for somebody, what seems like a failure for somebody else, you know, might be perceived or felt as a victory. So John came to the class, and he came to the airport with us, and he had kind of, you know, already made the decision not to fly with us. And so him and I had a really, really cool conversation. And long story short, you know, he went through the security, he went to the gate area, and then in Burbank, the cool thing is you actually get to walk up to the plane. So we met the pilot there. We talked to the pilot a little bit because he was actually standing at the bottom of the stairs. And John got on and, you know, really took that in. And instead of previously where, you know, a lot of fearful flyers, when you rush out, you finally can't take it anymore. And Captain Ron talks about that a lot. It literally burns itself into our neural pathways as a traumatic experience. So now we really compounded our problem. Whereas we taught John and the participants in the class on how they can not only recognize, but also re-regulate what's going on inside of them, which ultimately leads to creating a better experience. So John walked on the airplane, walked through it, got off, and really decided that it wasn't quite time yet for him to fly, but he did actually come at the end. When we flew to Sacramento and then came back to Burbank, he was actually there celebrating with everybody, which was just such an amazing experience, because everybody was like, oh wow, it's great to see you, and he was really empowered by that too. And then he just posted yesterday that he took a helicopter flight. I think he just chartered a helicopter, correctly? Is that right, Ron?
Yeah, just you want just get somebody to take you up there, which takes extreme courage, because no fixed wing pilot. There's always a inter-flying competition between people who fly helicopters and people who fly fixed wing, and the lore is that helicopters don't really fly. It's all done with an intricate system of pulleys and mirrors. So, but that's an inside joke. Yeah. No, it really, yeah, you go out there, and it took a lot of courage, I'm sure, for John to do that. But yeah, so he decided to go on, Peter.
Yeah, and so he posted pictures on Facebook of his flight in the helicopter, and it just, you know, his creativity, his determination, and, you know, the putting the things into action that he learned at the class, you know, how it all came together so that he could find his path and you know, and take the next step. Sorry, Captain Eric, you were gonna say something?
Oh, I just want to, you guys are the mental health professionals, but that Burbank week was the week that I got to fly, was a very powerful experience for me as well. And as we mentioned, we got 27 out of 29 people that intended to fly on the airplane, and they willed themselves forward, and lots of tears and apprehension and everything else. And when we turned around and came back from Sacramento down to Burbank, what Ron, half of them were sleeping. Yeah. They were laughing, having fun, and I was fighting to stay awake to help them, and they were sleeping. So that was
go right into the sleeper Hall of Fame.
They went right. Yeah, they completely got it in two legs. And the other thing that was interesting, our group that we were speaking to initially at the studio at Air Hollywood was about 50. And so a bunch of them had shown up there not intending to fly. And when we left for the airport, they had bonded so well with the group, they felt regret that they had not purchased a ticket and were not going. They were sad that they hadn't pressed on to the next level of the journey.
And that's something that I've noticed over the years is really common, that people, when they go to the class and they have trouble imagining, 2 weeks, a month out when they sign up for the class, they have a hard time imagining that they'll be ready to fly. And then when we get through the class, people are like, oh man, I wish I had signed up because I feel like I'd like to go flying or something. So it does happen fast. It's kind of ironic, I think, that the same part of the process in the brain that generates fear is also the part of the brain that is really our creative part. It's where our creativity comes from. So it explains two things. One, why you scare yourself to death in a really good fashion if you are fearful or afraid of something. And the other thing is it also speaks to, I think, what John Mattingly found out. You can come up with a creative solution to that. And that's how I would characterize his whole decision to get a ride in a helicopter to do that, would be just to do that. So, okay. I don't see a whole lot of other comments. We would like you to, like I said, spread the word. And now you can see us on YouTube, both live and following the show. We do want to highlight what's coming up at FearlessFlight. We do have the next Clear for Takeoff 101 class on May 4th, and we're going to be announcing a new feature as part of FearlessFlight, and it'll be something that we'll unleash here in the next couple of weeks. I think certainly by the time we get to the 101 class on Saturday, May 4th, and then again the Clear for Takeoff 201 and 301 class, those next editions are going to be here in Phoenix on July 20th. We do not have the registration page posted, but again, we're hoping to get that up in the next by the next 101 class on May 4th as well. So 101, anybody who's going to be in Phoenix on Saturday night, May 4th, we would really like to have you join us if you have any interest in the 101 class. And then on July 20th, the next 201 and 301 class. And right now, tentatively, we're looking for the next class in the Los Angeles area over at the Air Hollywood studios to be on October 26th. So with that, I think that that's pretty much all I had for tonight. And next week, we're going to have a special guest. Again, we'll be talking to a person who was actually at the Air Hollywood class. So anything, closing remarks, Peter?
I just want to say shout out and hello to Bill Soller, long time.
Oh, Bill, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I texted all the way to Japan with him.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. I didn't even remember that.
Oh man, it's great. It's great to hear from you, Bill. Hey, send me a message, Bill. Let me know how you're doing. I'd love to hear from you. So, okay.
And the last thing is just Paul Newkirk. I'm so excited. He's flying out to Houston tomorrow night. So I hope what Paul does, if he has the time for it, he takes videos of the takeoffs and then posts them in our Facebook group. And I love watching them. And sometimes I was wondering, do you know on YouTube you see those pilots that are actually filming their their takeoffs and their landings? Are those? I have a question for you, Eric. Are those things that their company sanctions, or because I've had a message a couple of weeks ago by somebody who watched on YouTube. I guess it was British Airways or. Swiss Air, I think has some good ones out there. Yeah. So the question was,
jump in on yours. Yeah.
Doesn't that
those are pretty much
the pilot? That's the main concern is, and what is the company policy in your company?
Well, exactly what you're alluding to, like the SAS video, which is really good. And it was really kind of them to put that together for everybody and have that sanctioned by those guys. If I was going to do that, and I think most of my counterparts at the other company, you would have to approach the company, say, I want to do X, Y, and Z. What do you think about this? If I just went out and filmed the takeoff and had commentary. Our Department of Nerds, who monitors social media continuously, we have a whole department, that's all these guys do, monitor that. When they saw that on TV, look at these jackwagons, they're actually filming themselves instead of flying the airplane. I'd get some unpleasant phone calls and would probably get...
You might as well mail in your license.
Yeah, and as we refer to it, I would probably have significant time on the beach, as we like to refer to it, for that sort of activity.
Yeah, I figured as
upon.
much. I figured as much
Yeah.
because unless it's sanctioned and there's contingencies made, I didn't think that any pilot or first officer could just hold up their phone and that's. But I didn't know, so I said I hope I remembered to ask on the live show because we have an active captain here. So, and so that's reassuring to know.
Yeah. One last shout out to Rita, who is now in Warsaw. I'm sorry, I keep trying to put her in Poland. She's in Beirut, Lebanon. She was at the 101 class. She was convinced there was no way she was going to make it. We did some coaching. She called me we texted from the airport, texted on the airplane, everything. And the next thing she knew, she was landing in London to change flights and on her way to Beirut. She landed and I had to laugh because she said, now the only thing I have to worry about is getting along with my family the whole time when I'm over there. So, and I said, well, the same strategies that work for getting over your anxiety due to flying will work for anxiety getting along with family members. So with that,
here's one more thing I wanna acknowledge, and that is our Jim Duke. Jim, I'm so happy that we could even provide an enhancement to your experience of Fearless Flight, because Jim actually is watching our show on the big screen TV and commenting on his iPad on Facebook. So I don't know if it can get better than that, but thanks for sharing that, and I'd be happy to watch the replay actually on the big screen TV as well. So very good idea.
Well, we got a great group of people and fans growing up there. So thanks again for watching us, and we'll be back again next week, 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern, simulcasting to Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. So have a great week, everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.